Predator Oil and Gas is a standard listed oil and gas company with some helium as well, assets in various jurisdictions, but notably in Morocco and Trinidad. There's a lot to look forward to in the coming months. Here to tell us more about it, Paul Griffiths. Paul, tell us what's coming up and what investors should be excited about.
Good day. So, firstly, MOU5 in Morocco, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that MOU5 is probably the best structure to be drilled this year and early next year compared to anything else on the London markets at present or globally. And the reason why I say that is first and foremost scale, size, independent reserves gives us prospective resources in the range 5.9 to just over 10 TCF. It's onshore. It's cheap drilling, $3 million to drill the well. We own it 100%, the license. You compare that with, for example, the equivalent prospect for a super major in the offshore, tens or possibly even in the hundreds of millions to drill, huge development costs and different tax regime to what we see in Morocco. But we can look at that in more detail later.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned MOU5, a key really could become a key strategic asset both for Morocco and for Europe, which is just to the north of Morocco, as we know.
That's a fair question, because at the end of the day, Morocco needs gas. It produces very little gas. But the size of the MOU5 target, which is why we call it Titanosaurus, by the way, that's no accident, and it fits in with the Predator ethos. That size of prospect sitting just 3 kilometers from the Maghreb gas pipeline means that it's easy to supply the Moroccan power market, and potentially in the upside case, we can the capacity of the Maghreb pipeline allows us to move 1 BCF of gas a day through that pipeline if we had it for 10 years, which would also provide security of gas supply to Europe at a time when everybody's concerned about where the gas is going to be coming from over the next, not just the next year, but the next 5 or 10 years. So in that respect, it's strategically important, obviously, to Morocco, that goes without saying, but it also has a European dimension to it because of the ability to put gas into a pipeline to Europe eventually.
And so drilling is expected to commence in early 2025. Tell us a bit more about that and what that will mean.
So right now we're scheduling early Q1 for the drilling to commence. And the reason why it's very difficult to be precise in terms of day, time, etc. when you spud a well is because Morocco doesn't have a diversified well services industry. It doesn't have well equipment sitting there in Morocco. We're in fact the only company right now with a confirmed drilling operation over the next 4 or 5 months in onshore Morocco. And that creates a problem in terms of accessing well services and equipment. So what I can say now is that we have 100% of the well equipment and top-up equipment we either have in our warehouse or the last bits will be delivered over the next 4 to 6 weeks that we need as top-up. And 80% of services are basically allowed for and found and sourced, etc. The 20% remaining requires it being imported. And the reason why importing is difficult at present is everybody knows that there are all kinds of supply chain problems with vessels, all kinds of issues with the Red Sea, etc., and moving equipment around. So it's not an excuse. It's just a fact of life. Every day we are faced with potentially a situation that might delay us a week or 10 days. So it would be wrong for me to say that, unequivocally we're going to be drilling at the end of January, but that is the target, and you have to set targets and you have to try and achieve the services you need within that time framework.
Very good. So let's move to the financing matters. I understand that you're pretty well set up to pay for the upcoming work and pretty well set up generally from various angles. So tell us a little bit more about the financial position of Predator.
So, we've been in business since 2018 as a listed company. And in that time, for the last 4 years, we have no debt. So we have no debt. And if you think about it, that's a very strong position to be in the current climate compared to a lot of our peers. So we're never faced with an issue that we have to service a debt, and we're not likely to be faced with any such issue in the foreseeable future. We also have about 4.35 million sterling in cash as at the end of June in our interims that were announced. We have about 1.18 million sterling in a bank guarantee with ONIM. If we drill MOU-5, which we will in January, it will release potentially a large part of that bank guarantee to provide more liquidity. We are also, people often forget Trinidad in our context, but I always make a strong point that Trinidad is our safety net. And the reason why I say that is that we've created a position in Trinidad where we can develop cash flow relatively quickly. So we've been working on the last 6 weeks to basically start executing oil deliveries, certainly before the end of the year, if not by the end of November. And what this means is, potential cash of between, say, 1.5 million and 7.75 million sterling over the next 12 months. And there's a range there because of we're applying a wax treatment in Trinidad, which might uplift production by something like 3-fold. But we have a very strong position in Trinidad because we have nearly 50 million in tax losses. We don't have any heritage royalties. We keep our operating costs very, very low. We're the lowest operating cost company, I suspect, in Trinidad, other than the private local companies. And that means our margins, our net back at $70 a barrel, is in the range of $37 to $41 per barrel. So you don't have to be a brain surgeon to understand that that is a very, very important safety net for us in terms of generating cash. And we will build that profile up consistently, and we're fully funded for the 2 workovers that we want to do on that. So coming back to MOU-5, which we're allowing for about 2.4 million sterling equivalent, we're fully funded to drill that well and complete our program in Morocco, in Trinidad.
Very good. So we've heard a lot about MOU-5. There's also MOU-3. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we have about 470 BCF prospective resources and contingent resources in what we call the biogenic gas play, which covers about 68 square kilometers. It's unique to Morocco. So when we came to this basin, nobody had ever drilled this before. So we have to have a degree of patience because it's a learning curve and we're collecting data all the time. That's not an excuse. That's another fact of life. If we had the information now ahead of drilling, we would have drilled the wells differently with a different mud system. So when we drilled those wells, we drilled the wells with a mud system that reacted with these sands. And these sands, the mineralogy of the sands, and these sands were not expected in this basin. They were expected to be like the Raab Basin, but they're different to the Raab Basin. So that makes it much more difficult to get the sands to flow, not because of the quality of the interval, but because of the drilling practices and the drilling mud used. So we deployed Sandjet in the summer. Sandjet was successful in perforating the top and bottom of this biogenic gas interval. And that was the first time we had achieved that after we tried it unsuccessfully with the perforating guns in February earlier this year. So then we allowed the well to hopefully naturally clean up and allowed pressure monitoring with downhole gauges for the last 2 months. We've decided that we've reached a level that the pressure is not going to increase anymore. So we now have to go in with what's called a swabbing unit, which takes out some of the liquid in the wellbore and some of the mess that is there from all these fine clays. And that hopefully will create more drawdown pressure to stimulate the flow to start. So that's the next step. As I explained earlier, it's not that you can walk into your local supermarket and take a swabbing unit off the shelf. The one unit in Morocco is now under contract to ONIM doing a huge number of well abandonments. So we're having to schedule a few days within their program to come over to MOU-3 to do this exercise. So what I want to reassure everybody is that nothing has changed in terms of the volumetrics. Nothing has changed in terms of our objective. Because of the nature of the section we're drilling with, it was unplanned for. We're learning all the time, but we are totally focused on getting that gas out of the ground, flowing at a rate that will establish the CNG project. So nothing has changed in that respect. We just have to be patient. I know that's a horrible thing to say in this market. Nobody has patience. I don't have patience, which is why, I had to restructure a few things during the summer to ensure that we were delivering, at a quicker rate. So we will get there. We will get there. But it's a question of not, days or weeks. It's several months to get us through, probably to the same time as when we're drilling MOU5. And again, there's another reason for that is you're going to mobilize equipment. We might have to mobilize a little bit of extra equipment. We might not, depending on the swabbing results, but you want to do it all at the same time. And that's the way you save costs. We're not going to throw money away by, having people standing around doing nothing and equipment standing around, which we're paying for. Simple as that.
Yeah. So plenty going on inside Predator, and a lot to look forward to over the coming months and into 2025. What to sum up, what are the key news flow items likely to be, and the key catalysts?
Well, there's no doubt that the key catalyst is the drilling of MOU5. I mean, what I didn't mention, there's also a potential helium play in MOU5, which, if successful, based on modeling with the Hassi Armel field in Algeria to the east, could supply up to 2% of the current, helium supply in the world. So that's a bit of icing on the cake. But the main focus is the gas potential of MOU5 and drilling a world-class prospect that, frankly, no other company of our size has anywhere in the world onshore. That's the opportunity for us as shareholders. I'm a shareholder, as directors, etc. And we will not deviate it from that plan. Whatever it takes, it will happen. But we are also cognizant of the fact that we have to keep things going in the background, and this has the ability just to swamp everything in terms of the market perception. That's quite right, because the scale of the opportunity is massive. But Trinidad will push ahead. We've got the workovers being completed this year. We've got the production that's coming on stream. We're going to be acquiring additional assets in Trinidad for no cash and no share consideration. The way we do it is patent it to us, so we're not going to disclose that. And we don't forget about Ireland, because there's going to be a change in government at the end of this year with the election. We have a farm-in proposal already for Corrib South. That party is someone with massively deep pockets who might one day get interested in Morocco if we make a gas discovery. But more importantly, we'll get value for Corrib South after several years. So these are all the things to look forward to, but please focus on MOU5, because that is game-changing, not just for me, for the company, our shareholders, but potentially for Morocco, and could impact Europe. And you will not get another opportunity like this in the next 4 months. I can guarantee that.
Fascinating and exciting stuff. Thanks very much for talking us through all that today. Paul Griffiths, Predator Oil and Gas.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk. And I would last thing I would add is we only try to inform the market when we've got a plan to inform them with, and we're not just updating them every day that we walked out yesterday and looked at the well site.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks very much.